Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this second session of this new TechNet 21 webinar series on temperature monitoring, keeping a cold chain cold. Today, I'm pleased to welcome our guests who are going to discuss data at your fingertips, how to best use your 30 DTR data. I'm happy to welcome Amos Chewya, Regional Immunization Technical Officer with inSupply Health Kenya, Brian Powell, Senior Engineering Lead at New Horizons, Schoevers, Technical Specialist at UNICEF, and Wendy Prosser, Senior Technical Advisor at JSI. Please ask your questions during the presentation in the Q&A box or in the chat box, but preferably in the Q&A box. They will be answered by the panelists after the presentation. As usual, this session is recorded and we'll share the links to the video as well as the slides by email and on the TechNet 21 website. I'll share the links in the chat box during the presentation to the TechNet 21 page. Yaku, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. As Alex already mentioned, my name is Schoevers. I'm a technical specialist for UNICEF Supply Division, we'll be presenting today on 30-day temperature recorders and the use of these devices, and then some methods at the end to make the sharing of your data a little bit more seamless. So let's start off with the slide shown here on the screen, and my apologies for the edits and the text a little bit overrunning here. So on 30-day temperature recorders, 30 DTRs, as you'll hear us referring to today, what are these devices used for? So typically these devices are used for continuous monitoring of temperatures in vaccine refrigerators. So this is a local way of monitoring the temperatures inside your inside a vaccine refrigerator. It's used to monitor the current temperature, and it's also used to alert users to any temperature alarms that has already occurred. So overall, this makes the device very useful for the user to understand whether or not a alarm excursion or temperature excursion has happened in the past, so it's useful for responding to equipment failures and then subsequently checking the vaccines for any damage that may have occurred. This over and above let's call it the use of STEM thermometers. 30-day temperature recorders are recommended as a minimum to monitor vaccine refrigerators. STEM thermometers are very good at showing you the current temperature, but it does not have any historical record of what happened to the vaccine refrigerator, say over a weekend when there was nobody there to check those temperatures. So what is a 30-day temperature recorder? It's a small electronic device that records and displays the current temperature and then the alarm status of the overall device. It also shows a rolling history of any temperature alarms that has occurred during the previous 30 days. It also shows you a record of the previous 30 days temperatures as well. So the data that can be accessed on the little screen of the device, and you can see these devices on the top right hand of the screen here. The data that can be accessed directly on the device is data for 30 days. This data is cyclically overwritten so that you always have 30 days worth of data on the device. So the device functions for the entire battery life of the device, which is much longer than 30 days, but you're always able to see the last 30 days data on the device, and hence the name 30-day temperature recorder. It's also important to note that these devices, they are PQS pre-qualified and are supplied pre-programmed by the manufacturer with alarm settings that is suitable for monitoring vaccine refrigerators specifically. And I call out vaccine refrigerators specifically because the alarms are basically set to alarm that if it picks up a temperature higher than 8 degrees Celsius for longer than 10 hours, or anything lower than minus 0.5 degrees Celsius for longer than 1 hour, that will create an alarm on the device. Next slide, please. Thanks, Wendy. So, what are the different devices that's available on PQS? So, what you can see on the screen, the picture on the left is the Berlinger FridgeTag 2. You've got the Berlinger FridgeTag 2E, the higher HETL01, and then the Logtag VaxTag. Some of you may be very familiar with these devices. Some of these devices may be completely new to you, but these 4 options are available on WHO PQS. So I'm not going to go through the PQS codes. What you can see is that these devices come with either internal or external sensors. Internal sensors basically means that the whole device is put inside the vaccine refrigerator. External devices are external sensor devices, means that the body of the 30-day temperature recorder can be outside the refrigerator, and then the sensor can be run inside the refrigerator. So what you'll also see here is that typically these devices can operate from anything between minus 40, minus 30, and up to plus 60 degrees Celsius. So these devices are quite capable to monitor a wide range of temperatures. But just to bring us back to the point that I made earlier, is that the devices are pre-configured with settings specifically for vaccine refrigerators, so 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. So even though the operating range is very wide, these devices are supplied pre-configured specifically for vaccine refrigerators. Then going to battery life, you see the battery life starts at least 2 years, and then also goes up to 5 years as well. So as I said earlier, the device will keep on recording data for this entire battery life, and it will always show a rolling 30-day history of the previous 30 days. And then data is typically downloaded via USB. The last device also has a cradle for download of data. Next slide, please. So let's quickly talk about what data is available on the device display. So as you can see here, it always shows you the current date and time, the current temperature, alarm status, and also the battery status. You can also see alarm settings, and then also going into the historical alarm dates, alarm temperatures, and alarm duration. So for instance here, on the Berlinger FridgeTag 2E, which you can see on the bottom left screen here, the little check mark there shows you the overall alarm status, whether or not there was an alarm detected or not. The little up and down arrows that you can see on the top of the Berlinger FridgeTag 2E shows you that on a specific date, that there was either a high alarm or a low alarm. In the middle of the screen, you can see the date and the time, and then the current temperature on the bottom right-hand side of the little screen. So for the higher HETL01, you can this device has a simpler display that shows you less information, but you can basically access all the same information by sequentially clicking on the one button that is on the device. And this is what that little graph is aiming to show you. So for instance, if you are on the normal displayed screen, you can see the overall alarm status showed by a little X on the screen there. In the top left-hand corner, you can see the battery status, and it also shows you the current temperature. Now, if you click on the little button once, it'll show you, for instance, the date of an alarm that has occurred. And then if you click on it again, it will show you the value of that low alarm. And the L on the screen shows you that it's a low alarm as well. Simpler screen, but you can also access all the data by sequentially clicking on the button. And then if we go over to the log tag, vax tag, you can see similar data displayed on one screen once again. In the middle of the screen, you can see that the current temperature is 10.5 degrees Celsius. Just above that, you can see that the device is in alarm status. It shows you alarm. And then if you look at the bottom right of the screen, it will show you that today it has picked up an alarm. 7 days ago, it has picked up an alarm as well. And 19 days ago, it has also picked up an alarm. At the top, you can see the current time as well, 13 minutes after 10. And at the right at the top in the right-hand corner, you can see the battery status, telling you that the battery is still okay. So on all these devices, if you click on the buttons that is on the device, it will show you more information like historical alarm data, the dates, the alarm temperature, and alarm duration historically as well. So by clicking on the buttons, you can access a lot more information right on the screen. Right, thank you. Next slide. So all these devices also have data available through reports that also can be shared. So these reports are generated by plugging these devices into a USB port. And then the report will generate automatically on your laptop or personal computer. On the right-hand side, you can see an example of a PDF report that was generated by the FridgeTag 2 devices. And it shows you a 30 to 60 day summary record of all the temperature and alarm data that was collected by that device over that period. It's generated in either a PDF or an Excel format. And it gives you a very good overview of what happened actually during the last 30 or 60 days. So you can see some of the columns are calling out alarms. So you can see on a specific date that there was an alarm and what that specific alarm value was. Just quickly talking about the different devices that we have available. If you want to learn more about these devices and understand a bit more data and as well as prices, you can always go over to the UNICEF Supply Division supply catalog, where we have all the devices listed that is currently available for purchase directly through Supply Division with specifications and prices as well. Coming back to the reports, the data available through the reports, these reports can also be shared for reporting up to higher levels and for review as well. So historically, you could share these PDF reports via email. You could also have the supervisor come to the location and download the data directly. Sharing via email is how the devices were originally designed, but it's somewhat clunky and not always so easy to use. And that's where we get to the Varo application, which was recently introduced, that makes sharing of these PDF documents and all the data in the reports quite a bit more seamless. So I'll maybe wrap up here and give over to my colleague Brian that will take us through the Varo application.
Thanks, Jakob. So my name is Brian Powell. I'm an engineer with New Horizons. New Horizons is a USA-based nonprofit focused on using technology to address challenges in global health. And we are the developers of the Varo application. So I'll provide a brief overview of Varo here. Next slide. So for a little bit of the background for the driver to create the Varo application, when we recognize that visibility into real-world cold chain performance has been a longstanding challenge, we saw that there's a big opportunity here because there are very many 30DTR loggers installed in fridges that create a very large data set on fridge performance. But without a systematic way to capture data from those loggers, for the most part, they've remained left inside refrigerators. So we developed the Varo Android application as a simple tool to enable users that have smartphones to plug into those loggers, download data from the 30DTR, and create a machine-readable email report that they can send to their program or their colleagues. Next slide. So for a little bit more about how Varo works, the user downloads the application. They plug that into the 30DTR logger using a small USB adapter. They follow a few steps in Varo to answer a few questions, and then they send a report via email. This application is available as a free download from the Google Play Store. And just a little bit more detail about that USB adapter. This is called an OTG adapter. These are typically available in electronic stores or in local markets. We can provide links to them if needed. We also currently have a collaboration with Berlinger, who's the provider of the FridgeTag loggers, to include Varo provided OTG adapters in shipments of FridgeTag loggers. So those will be available in the right places for people to use them as needed. Next slide. So really, Varo is just a simple tool where you connect, answer a few questions, and then send the report via email that contains the data from that 30DTR logger, including all the temperature history that was on it. Next slide. So it's really important to consider where data goes after it's downloaded using the Varo application. So on this graphic, we can see how that works, where the temperature logger lives inside the fridge. Varo is used to download data from that temperature logger. Additional data is added there, including photos, location information, make and model information, as well as facility information. And then that data is transmitted via email to wherever the user within Varo specifies. So there's no channeling of data to the developers or anybody else. It's just to the user, to the email address that the user enters. So typically this would be a Gmail account that is set up for EPI data ownership. And then managers or colleagues within EPI can view those reports directly in that Gmail account. Next slide. So clearly there's additional value to be generated here, though, if multiple reports that are in that Gmail account can all be viewed simultaneously. So that's where this additional app called Pogo LT comes in that converts numerous Varo generated reports into aggregated summaries. So rather than talking too much more about these applications generally, I wanted to provide just a brief recorded demo to show exactly how to use these tools, from downloading data from a 30DTR logger all the way through to using Pogo LT to summarize those reports. Next. Let's take a look at how to use the Varo Android application for creating a cold chain temperature report using the data from a 30DTR logger. So on the screen here, you can see the Varo Android application is installed on this phone. Now I'll plug in the 30DTR logger using the USB OTG adapter. This will take just a few seconds for the Varo app to recognize the logger. And then we're shown this screen where the user is prompted to create a report. Press Create Report. The Varo app downloads data from the logger, indicates that the logger can now be unplugged, and the user is prompted to press Continue. On this screen, the Varo app will ask for the facility name, and if possible, it will auto-populate the sub-county, county, and country fields. Those can be corrected by the user if they're seen to be inaccurate. So here we'll enter a health facility name. And at the bottom, we can press Continue. But on this page, you can also click either this PDF button or the chart button for visualization of the data that was downloaded from the 30DTR logger. So if we press on the chart button here, we can see a temperature chart showing the average temperatures from each of the prior 60 days of data, as well as whether there were any high or low temperature alarms. If we go back to the main page, we can also click on the PDF screen, and we can see the PDF document that the FridgeTag itself created. So going back to the report generation process, now that the health facility information is entered, the user presses Continue, and now the app prompts for filling in the health facility in charge name and contact information. So I'll just enter a dummy name and phone number and press Continue. Now it asks for information about the refrigerator. So here is where a few photos can be taken, as well as entering the make and model of the refrigerator. So I'll start with the photo. Here we can take a photo of the refrigerator itself. We can also take a photo of the fridge tag. And we can select the make and model of the refrigerator. In this case, it's a TCW40 STD. And press Continue. Now, as a last step, the Varo app will ask which email should this report be sent to. This is entirely controlled by the user, and this is the only place where the resulting report is transmitted. So in this case, I'm going to use a Gmail account that we will also use to demonstrate the Pogo LT data aggregation application using this report. We can enter any notes at the bottom. These will be populated into the Varo report, and press send. So what Varo has done is created an email containing all of the data that was downloaded from the logger, as well as entered by the user, and put together an email report that can be sent from the default email client on the user's phone. If we press the send button in the upper right-hand corner, then it just jumps back to the Varo history screen, and that email report is completed and transmitted. So that's all it takes to create a Varo report that contains data from the 30DTR logger and contains standardized information about the health facility and the location information from the facility as well. Those emailed Varo reports containing 30DTR data will be the most useful if they can be aggregated in a simple way. So let's also take a look at the Pogo LT data aggregation application to see how that works. First, let's take a look at the Gmail account where I sent that Varo report. Pogo LT demo is the account that I sent it to, so let's log in here. So in this email account, we can see that there is a most recent report that was just sent. If I click on that, I can see all of the information that we entered in the Varo application, as well as the photos and report from the 30DTR logger. So what the Pogo LT application will let us do is take all of these emailed Varo reports and process them into a single Excel spreadsheet where all of the data can be analyzed very efficiently. So let's take a look at how that works. If we navigate to pogolt.org, and just press Launch Pogo LT, it will prompt you to sign in with the Google account where you want to process the Varo reports from. So we want to use the Pogo LT demo Gmail account where we just saw that the Varo reports were sent to. We'll continue to accept there. And now we're into Pogo LT, and it will ask for the date range of the Varo reports that we want to process. So here we'll select just the last few days and press Next. Pogo LT now asks for the destination email account where we want the report that it creates to be sent. So this will be the spreadsheet that contains all of the data from the various Varo generated reports. In this case, I'm going to use that same Gmail account so that we can see the report show up there, although this can be any email account that you select. The user is prompted to agree to the terms and conditions and privacy policy, and then press Generate Report. Now what Pogo LT is doing is downloading emails from that Gmail account that were created by Varo for the date range that was selected. And so here we can see that there were a total of 4 reports, as we saw in that email account, and it's processed the summary statistics of performance showing the safe time and the excursion time either in an alarm state or in the not alarming state. So now that report has been created by Pogo LT and sent to pogoltdemo@gmail.com. So let's take a look back in the Pogo LT demo Gmail account. So here we see the most recent emails from Pogo LT. If we click on this, we can see the summary report that we were just looking at within Pogo LT. And we'll notice that there are 2 attachments, one of which is an Excel spreadsheet. So let's download that. And when we open that spreadsheet up, we can see that there's a few tabs. On the first tab, the Summary tab, are the summary statistics showing how many 30DTR reports were received and the overall thermal performance across all of those reports from those various loggers. We'll see here that there's actually only 3 unique loggers, even though there were 4 reports, and that's where Pogo LT has recognized that 2 of those reports were from the same logger. If we click on the 30DTR Reports tab, we can see the spreadsheet where Pogo LT has processed all of the various Varo reports and shows a single row for each logger, with the worst performing fridges or loggers floated to the top. So here in this first row, we can see the logger that has some alarms shown, and the ones below are showing stable temperatures within the 2 to 8 degrees C range. If we scroll over to the right, we can see alarm count and percentage, as well as overall excursion time and safe time. If we keep scrolling over to the right, we can see the CCE make and model information, as well as facility location information is shown here. And if we scroll all the way to the right, we can see who sent the report. So what this is showing is how with Pogo LT, you can take numerous Varo reports and process them into a single spreadsheet so that instead of wondering where the trouble is, you can find the fridges that need the most attention all in one document. So that's the full flow from downloading a report using Varo all the way to analyzing those reports using Pogo LT. And what I really want to highlight here is there's no infrastructure stand-up required for this. There's no subscriptions required. It's just downloading these two free tools and using them with your 30DTR FridgeTag loggers to create an end-to-end monitoring system. This next slide. So to summarize here, Varo is a simple smartphone application that collects cold chain data and forwards it to the inbox of your choice. It can download temperature data from 30DTR loggers. It's also possible to create a manual report where there isn't a 30DTR available to download data, where the user just enters the current temperature. This report includes photos, location, and other information to provide context for what might be going wrong with that refrigerator. And those standardized reports can be aggregated by downstream tools. The Pogo LT tool that we just looked at is one example of that doesn't require any infrastructure subscriptions to use. It's just available right now for anybody to use with their Google account. Also, Varo reports can be routed to full-featured dashboards for visualization and reporting. There are ways for these Varo reports to be ingressed into ELMIS tools or full-featured dashboards. And so next, Amos is actually going to show us an example of that, where Varo is being used with a dashboard in Kenya for data visualization. So Varo has now been implemented successfully by API programs in multiple countries. So let's jump over to Amos to see an example of that in Kenya.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, my name is Amos Chewya. I'm making this presentation on behalf of inSupply, together with the National Program of Immunization in Kenya and some select counties where the Kenya Cces performance monitoring experience has been done. The goal of this experience, or this cold chain performance monitoring, is actually to improve and standardize vaccines cold chain temperature monitoring process and increase data used to inform operations and management actions at all levels of the vaccine management. That was our broad goal. We had three objectives here. And one objective was to improve Cces monitoring and the use of data for decision making by supporting the Kenya immunization program and stakeholders to implement key performance indicators, analytics, and data use processes using impact teams that do already exist in the country at all levels. We also expected that we shall be sharing experiences and learning on the Cces monitoring and data use initiatives with external partners and contribute to global initiatives. And external partners are like those of us who are here in this meeting. And the third one was to partner again with the NVIP, which is the local immunization program, together with New Horizons, to initiate the use of a Varo mobile application to identify data opportunities for selected health facility fridges and with FridgeTag 2, and ensure integration of data into key performance indicators and mock-up dashboards. Next, please. We had approaches in doing this. As I mentioned earlier, we used Varo, which has been we have been taken through by Brian. We used human-centered design. We used Pogo DV dashboard. Remember, Brian has told us about Pogo LT, but in our case, we used Pogo DV, which is very close to Pogo Pogo DV, to visualize the data that was being collected by Varo. And finally, we used the existing impact teams to review cold chain data on a regular basis, and this case is on monthly basis. These impact teams already existed and were reviewing immunization supply chain data that did not necessarily include cold chain equipment performance data. Next. So the journey here started way back in 2019 when the country, together with partners, came together in a workshop to appreciate why cold chain equipment temperature data monitoring and use is essential in decision making. Yeah, so we had all the cold chain experts in the country. We had, I think, UNICEF represented and many others, including API managers from the national level, county to sub-county level, coming together and trying to look at what is it that can make them start reviewing and monitoring cold chain equipment data or temperature monitoring data. After that, in 2020, January to June, we had a smaller team that went and looked at what was recommended in the previous meeting, which are the indicators that were recommended, what did they recommend as visuals to visualize those indicators. So this a small team that was picked at the national level, looked at that and came up with a vaccines cold chain equipment key performance reference sheet that indicated the recommended indicators together with the visuals that went with it. So after this, around July last year to December, and now the country started looking at how these visuals that were recommended, how can they be visualized, how can they be used for decision making. So the country went into training some TOTs on Varo together with Pogo DB dashboard, and about 65 of them were trained. And at the same time, we were able, courtesy of New Horizons, we received OTG cables that were distributed, and as they trained facilities on how to use Varo to send data to through a Gmail to some destination. So this was done successfully, and at the same time as this was being done, the vaccines cold chain and KPIs reference sheet was also taken to another level for ownership of the country. We utilized HCD to gain insights into vaccines. What cold chain equipment related decision do they want to be seen? What data do they want to see? What KPIs are the recommended indicators and visuals, something that can be used at lower level or successfully to review data? Yeah, all these questions were answered with the HCD. And at the same time as this was being answered, now that the training had taken place, we started now integrating the CCE data review to the existing impact teams, where as they reviewed the other vaccine supply chain data, they included cold chain equipment data that was now being visualized on Pogo DB. Next, please. During this process, a few lessons were learned on Varo and of course Pogo DB. On Varo, we found that it was easy to train the 65 TOTs, and it was cost efficient and effective, and it was easy to scale up and have trainees retain the knowledge that they had been given. Following the video that Brian has just shown, it was also easy to enhance the uptake of Varo within the participants. By the way, I mentioned that we were doing this in 3 counties, and as I keep moving forward, I'll be referring to the 3 counties where inSupply had a presence and where impact teams were already in place and conducting monthly review meetings. It was also noted that as much as it requires internet, there's minimal data bundles are required to submit data using Varo. The approximate is about Kenya shillings 1, which is very 0.000 something of a US dollar. It's very small. As again, Brian mentioned, the OTG cables are easily accessible locally. And as much as we got them from New Horizon, but again, in the local market, these OTG cables were easily available and cheaply so. As we continued going through this, we realized also that as you go through the counties in the country, not all facilities really have reliable internet access. But again, we realize that Varo can be used without internet. You just need to, emails go to Outbox and can be sent as soon as you go to where internet is. We also noted as we went through this, initially we deployed this Varo in public facilities. But as we went on and we kept on meeting and people started seeing what's happening, private facilities also start becoming interested in having the app so that they can also visualize their data and use it for meetings and of course decision making. For Pogo DV, of course, we found out that it was easily acceptable and it was easy to incorporate within our impact teams. Again, what came up is that promoting Pogo DV as a report generating tool first and dashboard second enabled faster uptake of health workers. And the health workers here we are talking about are the health managers at sub-county and county level, and those who are able to view the dashboard, who had access to the dashboard at lower levels, but mostly we limited this to sub-county level. Sub-county is equal to district levels in other countries, and county is now like a regional level. So in Kenya, we have 47 county governments and 1 national government. The introduction of monthly reporting accountability, we had a feature that we wanted the sub-counties and counties and national level to own the data that is coming out of their equipments, their fridges. And we had this accountability feature that provided user a structured means to monitor CC data and provide feedback so that we have at the county level, somebody seeing what's happening. At the sub-county level, somebody's also seeing what is being reported for ownership purposes. Next. We talk about impact teams. This is what inSupply is known for. Actually, some people refer to it as it's inSupply's signature approach, which is, of course, people-centered, data-driven initiative for continuous improvement to strengthen the supply chain. So again, this work stream where we were looking at the cold chain equipment was integrated into impact teams with monthly review of CC cold chain temperatures. And as I mentioned earlier, there was already an existing impact team that reviewed in supply chain data without necessarily having the cold chain data. So simply is you review the data, you innovate, and then you do, so that you again go back to the same cycle. So you have your dashboard, you have your cold chain equipment reports that are visualized. You, at the meeting, you look through it, you see which are the areas causing problems. You dig in and find out which equipment, which region, which sub-county, which facility is causing equipment. Then you are able to send your technician to those areas and try to repair the equipment or see what is causing those problems that are being shown on the dashboards. Next. We also, during this time, we learned also lessons on impact teams. Of course, as I said, the CC data review was integrated at sub-county and health management team levels. So we have a sub-county health management team and we have a county health management team. but the lowest to the immunizing facilities is the sub-county health management team. So we had about 41 impact team members. As I said, in Nairobi, Mombasa, and Turkana, but most of the impact team members who are in Nairobi, followed by Mombasa, and then Turkana. As I mentioned earlier, impact teams, it is a structured supply chain problem-solving, action planning, and data use to help health workers build a culture of data use and, of course, continuous improvement. So some of the lessons that were learned during this time was that these impact teams provided an avenue of vaccines and cold chain equipment, temperature monitoring, data review, problem solving, and action planning. This was not there initially. And this has also been shown during the EVM assessments previously done, that there was no organized way of reviewing cold chain data on a regular basis. What we also came up with during these impact team meetings, you will have a nurse being in the meeting, you have a medical engineering technician in that meeting. So it really enhanced connection between immunizing supply chain and service delivery staff. They were able to talk and discuss and see how best to handle the equipment that hold the vaccines. Consistent and regular joint review temperature monitoring data enhances visibility and interest. So interest here, we are talking about those public, private facilities that later requested to be supplied with the Varo app so they can also start seeing their data being visualized. Next. So as impact teams really provided an avenue for review of the cold chain data at sub-count level, as I mentioned earlier. It enabled active monitoring of fridges, and as you may see my graphs here, they may not show much improvement, especially on the alarms, but we are hoping that as more facilities start reporting and the impact teams are spread across all the counties and they start really meeting regularly to review data, it may reduce the number of alarms as we move on. During this period also, as we worked out there, we realized that some of the FT2Es had really expired and we could not use them to send data for visualization at the Pogo DV. Again, some of the reasons why some of the Varo reports were not sent on time or were delayed or not sent at all is because, as you realize, we did this activity in 2020 when COVID was also around, and therefore there were some activities that were competing that made this not to happen. So as we move on, we are hoping that we'll be receiving regular reports, and that we are working closely with the ministry to make sure that facilities, the FT2 that have expired are replaced on time so that this can continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amos and Jaco and Brian. We're going to get into the Q&A just now. One thing I'd love to, I think it's really important to note that what we've talked about is the technology, the people, and the processes. And I think one of the important things about any technology for data is the ability to use it and have the people to actually use the data. So a couple of the questions we'll just start going through for the panelists. Can FridgeTag be used for the ultra cold chain CCEs?
Wendy, I'll maybe grab that one. So the FridgeTag cannot be used for the ultra cold, the ULT freezers. As you saw on one of the slides, the lowest temperature that these devices go to is about -30, -40 degrees Celsius. So your ULT freezers are at about -80 degrees Celsius. So it cannot be used for ULT freezers. Although Supply Division, UNICEF Supply Division does have 30-day temperature recorders available that can be used for that. It doesn't form part of this particular presentation, but Supply Division does have products available that can be used for that.
Great, thank you. And I'm scrolling through some of the questions. I think this one's very pertinent for each of the presenters. We'd love your insight on how 30DTR data can be used by decision makers to target maintenance resources and holistic immunization planning alongside coverage and equity data. So really looking at the overall how this data can be used from a practical standpoint for maintenance planning and how it links to coverage and equity. So using 30DTR and Varo app into the national systems such as ELMIS. I'm sure there are some opinions out there. And maybe Amos, I'll pick on you first, because I think you had the use of the data most distinctly through the impact teams.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. As I mentioned, this Varo data can, I'm sorry, this 30DTR data can be used to improve equipment performance and maintenance by, of course, regularly reviewing. I mean, if you are able to visualize that data, as I mentioned earlier, and you are able to have regular reviews of what is coming out of the equipment, you are able to plan with your, wherever you are, whether it's district level or facility level, you are able to plan to see how you can address the areas where we have equipment, or we have, say, a lot of heat or cold alarms coming from, and then you can plan for maintenance, and you can also even plan on whether, it can also tell you how a specific equipment is performing over time. Over to you, Wendy.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think it's a practical application, as Amos said, and really driving into planning decisions and understanding what the maintenance needs are. There's a question on temperature loggers, if they're able to send alarms to phones. Jaco, I'm going to pass this to you. So alarms to phones in case of temperature increase or decrease, and if there's the cameras and such for hunting areas, sending pictures every time something comes within a range, that type of thing.
Thanks, Wendy. So these 30-day temperature recorders are not able to send, let's call it emails or SMSs. That is a different category of devices, which are called remote temperature monitoring devices. We will have another session on that. I believe that's going to be next week,
yeah.
Where we will be talking about remote temperature monitoring devices. And these devices are basically enabled with SIM cards. So the data is transmitted wirelessly to a central dashboard. So it's I think that's kind of brings us a little bit back to the Varo and the Pogo app. So the 30DTRs is a local solution, but then in combination with the Varo and the Pogo app, the 30DTRs also has this ability to, let's call it, synchronize the data or send the data to a central dashboard or a reporting location. So it kind of bridges that gap between the remote temperature monitoring devices and the 30DTRs we're talking about today.
Thank you. There were a couple questions on just the technical details of both 30DTR and the adapter for be able to use with the 30DTR to send the reports. I know the UNICEF or the WHO PQS catalog has the details on 30DTRs. And Brian, maybe I suggest put in the details of the adapter into the chat. And they are available locally, at least in Kenya. They were, some places have been harder to find, but easy to get off of Amazon. And then there's a question on the Varo, if Varo works with all Android editions and even the old ones, and what are the minimum system requirements to operate Varo properly? And if there's a new expected version for iOS.
Yeah, I can take that question. So Varo works with Android versions back to Android 4.1 currently, which 4.1 was 2012. So that's quite a long time ago. There are some older, lower featured Android phones that don't have the ability to download data over a USB connection. If one of those phones is used with Varo, Varo will show a flag saying this phone doesn't support USB download, and it will prompt the user towards a manual report. So essentially, all Android phones in operation now should work with the Varo application, and most of particularly newer phones should have the full capability of downloading data. Regarding iOS, Apple has locked down that ecosystem pretty hard, so we haven't made a iOS version of Varo because the user experience would not be very compelling for being able to download data, so that's currently not available.
Good to know. Yeah.
A final comment on the OTG adapters. I'll post a link into the chat. I'll also post my email address there. If anybody is having any problems with OTG adapter availability, just send me an email and we can work out maybe providing some from New Horizons, or at least providing some more local availability of those. Those shouldn't be a limitation to the use of these tools.
And what you mentioned with Berlinger also bundling the cables with the 33TR, that's a great innovation. Should start being available. Another related question, is the Varo app compatible with other data loggers apart from Fridgetech?
Yeah, that's a great question. And right now, the Varo app is verified by the developers on both sides to be fully compatible with all of the Fridgetech series of products, the ACMA CFD50 and CFD50 STD, and those are the ones that are verified compatible. We've also done development to make it function with the higher HETL01, although we haven't done a full compatibility assessment with higher at this point, but that should work fine. The log tag is not functional with Varo, since the log tag uses a USB base to download data, and so you have to have extra hardware in the system that Varo does not function with.
This question I'm going to toss towards Amos. Would you recommend that a dedicated Gmail address be created for a country to collect the reports via Pogo? I'm wondering if the app could confuse other types of reports that you may receive with a personal email. Yeah, maybe Amos, you could give us some examples of how you'd manage this in Kenya.
Kenya is a bit sensitive on what is being shared from what belongs to them to the outside country. So what we have recommended is that the data has to pass through a government, an MOH Gmail account, then before it's released to PogoDB for visualization. So I think it's important that any data being shared from a given country is first of all cleared by the mother country before it goes for visualization. So yes, I can recommend that. I think maybe Brian can also say something about it. We had a few discussions here in Kenya before we started running this out.
Yeah, one additional comment on that one. Pogo LT will only download Varo reports from a Gmail account. It looks for specific Varo related content. And so if you happen to use a personal email account, Pogo LT will not be confused by that, and it will only download the relevant emails. But we do strongly recommend that an email address is created for the activity of Varo data download, so that emails can be forwarded from there and that clear data ownership by the country or region is assigned.
Thank you. And here's a tough question I'm going to toss toward Jaco, I think. How do we integrate these very nice systems in austere environments? For example, when responding to disaster emergency situations with areas with limited or no connectivity?
Great, and that's a very good question. And I think there are two aspects to that question. I think the first one is the technology itself. And then the second part of it is let's call it the use of the device, the in-country use of the device. So in terms of technology, when the specifications were put together for these devices by PQS, they went to great pains to ensure that these devices are robust and easy to use by the end users. Let's call it not super complex. So in terms of implementing this type of technology in a secure environment, this has been used all over the world. UNICEF Supply Division supplies all vaccine refrigerators with these types of devices. So we know that these devices are at least functioning well in countries. And that brings us to the second part of this, which is the use of the device. And I think this is where it's a bit more tricky, because you do need to have the in-country systems in place to be able to systematically review the data and make sure that you have the central level structures in place to facilitate that. And I believe that Amos was referring to this quite a bit in his presentation, the impact teams that were focused on reviewing the data. And the Varo and Pogo apps is another way of facilitating that. So I'm less concerned about the technology. I do think that the implementing these kind of systems in country, you do need to have the structure in place to support that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Go ahead.
Just to throw one technology related aspect into that, as Amos mentioned, specifically on the Varo tool, connectivity is not required when you're downloading a report with Varo. You can download a report where there's no cellular connection and create the full report, and then the report will go into the email outbox and be sent when you do have a connectivity. So from a technical perspective, particularly in really challenging remote environments, Varo is still usable in those environments.
And that's linked to a question on Varo, if it's real-time or monthly data collection, and it is a monthly data collection that a person does have to send in. It's not a remote data sending method like an RTMD is, but it does require that person part of things, which is always important. There's another really, yeah, go ahead.
Maybe one additional comment to throw in there. It's really up to the user how they want to use Varo to send those reports in. Monthly is a cadence that works really well and fits into standard immunization processes. It could be more frequently if they want to send reports more frequently, and Pogo LT will automatically deal with having numerous reports from the same logger over a certain period of time. So it will just automatically process all of those and put them together. So we've seen it used where reports are gathered upon vaccine deliveries on that cadence, or more frequently via the health nurses themselves. So it's really just up to the system how they want to implement that and how frequently they want data. But that's really the distinguishing factor between an RTMD system and a Varo system. A Varo 30 DTR system is the cadence of data delivery is driven by the users themselves rather than the automatic delivery of the system.
Great, thank you. A question on the FT2s expiring and the batteries weakening. What are the implications for data generated from poorly functioning FT2s? Jaco, do you have insight into that? If it changes things?
No, for sure. So these 30 DTRs, they have a specific battery life that they are valid for. And the sensor calibrations, etc., remain valid for that full battery life, for the validity guaranteed by the supplier. So once that device runs out of battery and it dies, for instance, that's where you can't access that data anymore. But to the point where the battery starts fading, that device will then switch off and not collect that data anymore. Once you get to that point where the 30 DTR is not functional anymore, you will need to replace it with a new one, because the devices, you cannot replace the batteries on these devices. You have to order a new device. Typically, they're not that expensive, but this is something that you need to take into account. You need to regularly replenish the devices that have failing batteries.
And then that's linked to just the planning and the budgeting that every country does on a usual annual basis. Another question related to Varo: can PDF reports be imported into Varo without connecting the 30 DTRs physically to a phone or a PC, in case the PDF report is already created and sent to the email, for example?
So that's not possible. The way that Varo actually works is it attaches the PDF report, but within the FridgeTag or other loggers, there's actually a separate report also that is the machine readable report. It's a CSV or a text file where the raw data is found. And so that's what Pogo LT is really using for the generation of the metrics. And so if there's a separate PDF report that's been downloaded separately, it's not currently very feasible to import that into the Pogo LT system. The report really should be created using Varo, because that's how location information, contextual facility information, photos, and everything else are attached to the report as well.
Great. And I'm going to push us to the edge with one last question. Is it possible to integrate the Varo data into existing remote temperature monitoring systems?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and this is going to take a little bit more work. It would require some integration work on the part of the dashboard providers for those remote temperature monitoring system providers, but we've developed Varo in a way that is intended to work with these kinds of systems. And one example of this is when you get that Pogo LT summary report, there is a link in the email that you receive to download the raw data associated with that report. So that will be a full machine readable download of all of the data in JSON format that can then be ingressed into a remote temperature monitoring database if wanted. There are also some other ways you can create custom tools to pull in those emails directly into those systems, and we'd be happy to work with anybody on the feasibility of those kinds of things because we've done it already with the Pogo DB system that Amos talked about. So there's a little bit more integration work required, but Varo is intended to facilitate that.
Great, good. We are out of time. I want to thank everyone very much for your contributions, for your questions, for your interest in this. Thank you very much to Jaco and Brian and Amos for your expertise in guiding us through this. And next week, as we already mentioned, is the next session on RTMDs. So we will see you back there next week.
This is great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Wendy. Yes, and if you want to know how to get the most of your real-time temperature monitoring data, it's next week. You don't have to register because you already registered for this session. And we will send you by email all the links to the presentations as well as to the recording of this session. Thank you very much, everybody. Lots of interaction. That's great. I wish you all a very nice rest of the day and stay safe. Bye, everybody.